okay, you are having this pain about me leaving. That's a you thing. That's yours to carry. That's not mine. And I think...
Welcome back to Glow Gossips USA, where the cameras cut, the microphones die, and the truth that no one dares to say is finally spoken out loud. The moment the judge entered, the room tightened like a fist. Reporters lowered their voices to a hush. Lenses steadied, and even the overhead lights felt colder, as if the building itself understood what was about to be pulled into the light. Christine sat upright on the plaintiff's side with a manila folder anchored beneath her palm, a folder that wasn't just paper, it was ignition. Across the aisle, Robyn's chin dipped toward her collarbone, lips set in a thin white line. Beside her, Kody folded his arms as if bracing for weather he'd been warned about but refused to believe. Janelle leaned forward with the stillness of someone waiting for a match to catch. Mary tried to disappear into the bench's grain. Judge Rebecca Hill adjusted her glasses, surveyed the docket with a face carved out of calm stone, and nodded for counsel to proceed. The first click of Christine's heels on the polished floor sounded like a verdict rehearsing itself. She placed the folder on the evidence table and spoke without tremor, a voice steady but ragged at the edges. Your Honor, this is not only a case about grief, it's a case about truth. My son's truth. The clerk slid the file toward the bench. Bank statements, email headers, deposit logs that ticked like a metronome. Money arriving on the 14th of each month, anonymous senders, a second account no one was supposed to know existed. Funded, Christine said, eyes traveling across the room, by someone in here. The words struck the gallery like a cold draft. Robyn blinked too slowly. Kody didn't move, but his knuckles leached white against the armrest. The judge's eyebrow lifted. You're alleging an in-family conduit during Mr. Brown's final year? I am, Christine answered, and then, after the softest breath, and it doesn't end there. The flash drive was almost nothing to look at. Black, thumb-sized, ordinary in a way that felt almost mocking. But the way Christine held it made the entire courtroom lean forward. 30 hours of covert audio, she said. Forensically authenticated, with his voice identifying each file he recorded to survive. The first clip woke the speakers with Garrison's voice. It wasn't panicked. It was the kind of calm that knows fear by its first name. If something happens to me, he said, find a folder called North Star. It's all there. The sound cut. The silence swelled. Someone near the back breathed out an "Oh my God" before the judge's glance turned it to ash. Christine continued. The exhibits multiplied, texts that toggled between affection and control, like an algorithm teaching itself to sound like love. You don't get to back out now. Do what she says. If you disappear, we all burn. Each line landed with the dull weight of a stone thrown into a well. Then the photo, a parking garage still, the kind that never means anything until the day it means everything. Garrison leaned into a car window. In the driver's seat, unmistakably, Robyn, eyes forward, jaw locked, the posture of a person trying not to exist. Mary turned toward her, voice small but clear. You told me you hadn't seen him. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was dense, heavy, the kind of quiet that gathers just before a door gets kicked in. When the defense rose, Robyn's face was wet, but her voice tried for a steadiness she couldn't quite hold. She spoke of loneliness, of misread intentions, of a young man carrying a weight that would buckle anyone. She said Samantha's name only to deny it. Christine didn't flinch. The judge didn't either. The prosecution returned to numbers, the deposits pattern, the anonymous tags, the 14th like an appointment someone kept religiously. Christine's attorney asked, "Did your son ever mention feeling followed?" The answer came later, but the question landed now, like a seed that already knew how to sprout. When the recess bell finally broke the spell, people stood too fast, as if the stillness had been holding them underwater. Christine didn't move. Her phone buzzed face down on the table. Unknown number. 5 words. You're getting too close. Stop digging. She silenced it without reading it again. Kody took the oath like it tasted wrong. Gone was the showman's swagger. He looked a decade older under the fluorescent lights. The questions had no choreography. When did you last see him? about a week before he died. What did you discuss? A loan, money, names being used to open accounts. Did he say Robyn? No. Did he say he was being coerced? No. Did he say he felt followed? Yes. Did you report it? No. The judge's pen paused. Only a second, but everyone saw it. The attorney slid a printed email across the rail. Sender, North Star 404 Air Proton Mail. Subject, ask your wife where she was. Did you open the attachment? I deleted it, Kody said, the words scraping out. Because if I read it, everything would be destroyed. Janelle's breath hitched. Mary stared at the floor as if it might offer absolution. Christine didn't speak. She didn't need to. The room understood the math. A father choosing silence because the truth was too loud. The next wave hit as a forensic accountant took the stand. A woman with the kind of voice that could cut glass and a stack of exhibits that didn't blink. She traced wire routes and masked IPs until a shell entity materialized. RS Consulting, a PO box in Flagstaff, a ledger showing deposits into Garrison's hidden account while money flowed in from a trust owned in Kody's name. A pattern. Consistent with controlled allowance, she said, a financial leash presented as support. The phrase landed, and you could feel people mentally test the collar. Robyn erupted then, words tumbling over tears. He was reckless. She was protecting him. The world is predatory. This was a hedge against danger. The emails disagreed. They stacked on the screen in cold text. He's cracking. Offer a lifeline, then isolate. Make sure Kody believes this is his doing. Guilt reads like leadership. The gallery exhaled in one ragged pull. Somewhere, a reporter's pen stopped scratching. The judge signed a subpoena before the clerk finished reading the name. Samantha. No longer a rumor, now an address, a phone, a trail. Night slid over the courthouse as if someone had dimmed the world. Rain combed the steps in wires of water. The stone reflected the city like a scraped mirror. Christine's phone hummed again in the dark of her living room. An audio file this time. Garrison's voice, softer, nearer, as if he'd stepped into the room. They're watching me, he said. But I left crumbs. You just have to know where to look. She listened twice. On the second pass, something clicked that hadn't on the first. A cadence, a vocal stress, a way he said the word crumbs, like it meant coordinates. She reached for the flash drive again, for the log, for the wall of dates and arrows she'd been building in her head. Patterns aren't proofs, but they're invitations. The rain hit the window in even strokes, a metronome for choices that could no longer be postponed. Morning returned the room to fluorescent order. The judge announced a development that rearranged the oxygen. A woman matching Samantha's description had been found overnight in a motel 2 towns away, checked in under a false name. She didn't run. She didn't argue. She didn't smile. She would testify. The bailiff opened the door and an ordinary face entered. Brown hair pulled back, unremarkable jacket, the kind of person you stand behind in a grocery line and never remember. But ordinary can be camouflage, and today the camouflage peeled at the edges. She took the oath without a quiver. State your connection to Garrison Brown, the prosecutor asked. I was his emotional advisor, she said, calm as a nurse, in a storm. I help people navigate dysfunctional families. Paid by whom? Robyn, she said. How much? $5,000 a month through RS Consulting. Did Garrison know? Not at first. Did you pressure him? Deadlines aren't threats. The room bristled at the euphemism. Did you ever hear of a folder called North to Yes? She said, and for the first time her eyes flicked, barely but enough to register. Where is it? Deleted, she answered, but he told me there was a physical copy. Where? He never said. Something near water, she added after a breath. His quiet place. Christine didn't realize she'd stood until the bench creaked. Lakeview. She hadn't thought about it in months. The creek where he went to think, where he said the noise finally ended. The judge's gavel called the day, but no one really heard it. The words had already left the building. A plan formed with the single-mindedness of a heartbeat. A ride, a lock, a unit number she could almost see written in her son's handwriting. Outside, the storm thickened, as if the sky itself wanted to know what would be pulled from the dark. In the aisle, as people gathered their coats and swallowed their questions, Christine's phone buzzed once more. No contact name. Just a photo, shot too close, too fast, a charred envelope with North Star scrawled across it, and beneath it, in fresh ink that bled at the edges. Too late. She stared at it without blinking, then lifted her chin and moved for the door. Some deadlines are threats, some are challenges, and some are traps you spring before they close. The storm outside wasn't just weather, it was omen. By the time Christine and the sheriff's deputy reached Lakeview, the rain was a curtain slamming down on every step. The bolt cutters clamped like jaws on the rusted padlock of Unit 47, and when the door screeched upward, the air smelled of damp cardboard and something older, heavier, like secrets left too long in the dark. Christine's flashlight cut across a stack of boxes, forgotten furniture, and then the sight of it stopped her cold. An aged duffel bag marked in thick black ink with a single word, North Star. Her hands trembled as she unzipped it, the storm's growl outside rising with every inch of the zipper's teeth. Inside, 3 spiral notebooks, a thumb drive, forged financial documents stamped with names too familiar, and a sealed envelope labeled, "If you still care." She opened the letter with fingers that already knew they'd shake. "Mom," it read, "if you are reading this, then I didn't survive. I tried to fight, I really did, but the weight was too heavy. They weren't just after money, they were after control. I love you. I hope this truth is stronger than me." Her knees buckled. The duffel pressed against her chest as if it were her son himself. The sheriff's radio crackled in the background, but Christine didn't hear. She only heard Garrison's voice rising from the page, louder than the storm. She whispered through her tears, "You left us the map." By morning, the courtroom was electric with rumor. Word had leaked. The North Star bag existed, and Christine had brought it with her. The gallery was packed shoulder to shoulder, the air buzzing like a hive about to swarm. When she laid the duffel on the evidence table, people leaned forward as if the weight of their bodies could drag the truth out faster. The notebooks were opened, each page a battlefield of handwriting, dates, transcripts, arrows, and names that formed flowcharts of manipulation. This wasn't a diary. It was casework. A son who realized no one would believe him unless he recorded every move, every whisper, every shadow. The prosecutor displayed the emails on screen, messages between Robyn and Samantha, some masked in code, others blunt to the point of cruelty. He's slipping. Change tactics, offer kindness, then isolate. Another read. Make Kody believe it was his idea. Guilt looks like leadership. The gallery erupted, gasps like a wave breaking against stone. Robyn's lips parted, her mask finally slipping. Kody's shoulders sagged as if the verdict had already been written in his bones. Then came the thumb drive, its folders unlocked by forensic experts. The room fell silent as Garrison's recordings echoed through the speakers, his voice worn, thin, but every word sharp enough to cut. April 17th. She told me if I didn't cooperate, she'd bury me in legal fees. I asked what she wanted. She said obedience. Another entry followed. May 3rd. Dad told me not to complicate things. Said loyalty meant signing what I was told. I laughed, told him he didn't know the meaning of loyalty. The final clip chilled the gallery into stillness. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it, but the truth will follow. The money. Don't believe her. She isn't who she says she is. Each word cracked the courtroom like thunder. Even the judge looked shaken, her gavel frozen above the desk. Then came the video. Blurry, shaky, lit by the glow of a desk lamp, but undeniable. Garrison looked directly into the lens, his eyes hollow yet burning with defiance. To my family, he said, I'm sorry. I wanted to be strong, but I was turned into something to be bought and sold. Dad, you told me survival meant obedience. Robyn, you told me I was broken so many times I started to believe it. But I'm not broken, I'm finished. His final words sank like stones into the silence, and when the lights rose, not a single person was dry-eyed. Not the jury, not the gallery, not even the reporters whose pens now hung limp in their hands. Robyn's mascara streaked down her cheeks as she whispered, "I didn't know." Christine shot back, her voice cold and precise. "You knew. You just didn't care until it was too late." Robyn sobbed louder. "I loved him." "No," Christine said, fire in her eyes. "You owned him, and there's a difference." Kody finally rose, his voice ragged, broken by a weight he could no longer dodge. "I failed him. I thought I was protecting the family, but all I did was protect the deception. I let it grow." Robyn turned on him, eyes wild with disbelief. "You helped me," she spat. Kody's response was barely more than a whisper. "I followed you because I was too weak to lead." The judge raised her hand, her voice sharp as steel. "We have heard enough for today. Court will resume tomorrow with closing arguments." The gavel struck, but the echoes weren't order. They were tremors. Outside, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters screamed questions, but Christine said nothing. She held up the notebook, opened to Garrison's final words, and let the cameras read for themselves. "Even if they don't believe me now, maybe someday they will. Maybe the truth outlives the lie." As the crowd pressed forward, chaos buzzing like hornets, Christine's phone vibrated once more. No number. This time not text, not audio. An image. A photo of the duffel bag, still unzipped, but the contents burning. The edges of the spiral notebooks curling into ash, the ink bleeding into smoke. And across the screen, typed in jagged letters, "You weren't supposed to find it." Christine froze, her breath caught between rage and dread. If someone had already reached into North Star's trail, then the story wasn't over. The story had just split open. The storm outside had passed, but the one inside the courthouse had only grown sharper. When Judge Hill took her seat the next morning, the gallery was swollen with bodies, strangers pressed shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same heavy air of anticipation. Christine entered, clutching the duffel bag like a relic, Garrison's notebook stacked inside as though they were a heartbeat she refused to let die. Robyn sat forward, her face raw from tears, but her eyes dull, empty, as if hollowed out by everything she had tried to bury. Kody looked older than anyone had ever seen him, his back curved, his shoulders bent beneath the weight of what he had confessed and what he hadn't. The silence before closing arguments was heavier than any opening statement. It was the silence that falls after a house burns down and only the frame remains. The prosecutor began without theatrics, her voice sharp and certain. She outlined the emails, the forged accounts, the phantom company under Robyn's maiden name, and the trail of money that wound back to Kody's trust. She showed the jury how love had been twisted into a leash, how Garrison had been corralled by guilt disguised as loyalty, by affection that looked more like ownership. Every page of his notebook, every text, every voicemail was a nail in a coffin. The Browns had hammered shut with their own hands. Then Christine herself rose, not as a lawyer, not as a witness, but as a mother who had lost everything but her voice. "My son was not paranoid," she said, her eyes locked on the jury. "He was recording. He was documenting. He knew you wouldn't believe him unless he left you every step, every name, every wire transfer. He was not broken. He was fighting. And if you call him paranoid, if you dismiss him, then you are killing him all over again." The room trembled with the force of her words. Robyn's sobs cut through the silence, but Christine never turned her head to look at her. She looked only at the jurors, daring them to deny what her son had died proving. Robyn's defense staggered to its feet, her attorney's words flat, half-hearted. They spoke of grief, of mental strain, of a young man collapsing under his own burdens. But the gallery was no longer listening. The jury wasn't listening. Even the judge's face betrayed the weight of evidence that could no longer be smothered. Robyn herself rose mid-argument, breaking the courtroom's rhythm, her mascara streaking as she cried out, "I didn't mean for him to die. I was trying to control the chaos. I was trying to protect us." Christine's voice sliced her down before anyone else could speak. "You don't protect someone by isolating them. You don't protect someone by blackmail. You don't protect someone by telling them they are broken until they believe it." Robyn collapsed back into her chair, shaking, while Kody lowered his head into his hands. unable to watch what he himself had enabled unravel so publicly. When the jury filed back in, the room locked into silence so complete, it seemed to swallow every breath. The foreman stood, paper in hand, eyes unblinking. We, the jury, in the case of Brown versus Brown on posthumous psychological coercion, financial exploitation, and obstruction of justice, find the defendants, Robyn Brown and Kody Brown, liable. The words slammed into the air like thunder. The gallery gasped, Christine's lips trembled, and Robyn folded into herself with a sob that sounded less like grief and more like collapse. Kody didn't move. Only a single tear tracked down his cheek, but it wasn't relief. It was the heavy, bitter acknowledgement of the truth he had tried so hard to smother. The judge's voice cut through the shock, declaring that all findings would be forwarded to the State Attorney General for possible criminal investigation into fraud, coercion, and conspiracy. The civil case had found them liable. Now the shadow of criminal charges loomed. For a moment, it was as if the roof itself had cracked open, exposing everything they thought they could hide. Christine didn't celebrate. She didn't raise her arms or cry out in victory. She sat very still, her son's journal pressed against her chest like armor, tears sliding silently down her face. He wasn't mad, she whispered, barely loud enough for Janelle to hear. He wasn't paranoid. He was right. And now they all know. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward, questions screamed into the chaos. Christine walked through them wordlessly, holding the notebook open to Garrison's final words. Even if they don't believe me now, maybe someday they will. Maybe the truth outlives the lie. That was all the statement she gave. But the story wasn't finished. Not yet. As Christine reached her car, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail, no caller ID. She pressed play, her hand trembling as Garrison's voice filled the air once more, faint, static-laced, but clear enough to freeze her blood. Mom, if you're hearing this, then they haven't stopped. North Star wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. There's more. Look deeper. Please, don't let them win. The message cut into silence, but the damage was done. Christine stood motionless, her chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. The trial had ended. The verdict had landed, but the war her son had fought in silence was still unfolding. The screen faded to black, and a single question burned across it. Do you think justice was truly served? Or has the darkest part of this story not even been uncovered yet? Comment below.